The rain wasn't just falling, it was screaming against the windows of our suburban home. I stood in the driveway, my breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to mist in the freezing air. My mother stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold, unyielding fury. In her hand, she held a single black plastic garbage bag. With a grunt of disgust, she threw it onto the wet pavement at my feet. "I never want to see your face again, Maya," she whispered, her voice cutting through the thunder like a jagged blade. "How could you do that to your own sister? How could you be so evil?" I tried to speak. I tried to tell her that the diamond necklace wasn't in my bag because I stole it, but because Sarah had slipped it there when I wasn't looking. I tried to tell her I loved her, that I was the one who had been taking care of her while she mourned Dad in a bottle of wine. But the door slammed shut, the lock clicking with a finality that echoed in the very center of my soul. I was 15 years old, it was midnight, and I had nowhere to go. I stood there, soaked to the bone, watching the porch light flicker out. Little did she know that get out wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of a journey that would lead me to a truth she wasn't prepared to handle. Have you ever been punished for a sin you didn't commit by the one person who was supposed to protect you? If you have, then you know that the cold outside is nothing compared to the cold in a mother's heart. My name is Maya, and for the first 15 years of my life, I was the invisible twin. People always say twins have a special bond, a psychic connection, but with Sarah and me, it was more like a shadow and a light. Sarah was the golden child, radiant, athletic, and possessed of a charm that made people forgive her even when she was cruel. She had this way of crinkling her nose when she laughed that made teachers give her A's she didn't earn, and made our mother, Alina, believe she could do no wrong. I was the quiet one. I was the one who stayed in the library after school, the one who noticed when the pantry was empty or when the bills were stacking up on the kitchen counter. Our mother was a woman who valued appearances above all else. After our father passed away when we were 10, her world collapsed. He was the anchor, and without him, she drifted into a fog of grief and denial. She clung to Sarah's social success like a lifeline, while I became the inconvenient reminder of the man she lost. I had his eyes, his quiet temperament, and his habit of speaking the truth even when it was uncomfortable. We lived in a house filled with expensive things and very little warmth. Sarah knew how to play the game perfectly. She knew that a single tear from her eyes could get me grounded for a month. I spent my days trying to be perfect, trying to earn a sliver of the affection she received so effortlessly. While Sarah was out at parties, I worked a part-time job at a local bakery called the Flower Pot. I did it to save enough for my own school supplies and clothes, but mostly I did it for the peace. The owner, Mr. Henderson, was a man of few words and silver hair. He taught me that flour, water, and salt could create something beautiful if you had patience and a steady hand. "Bread doesn't lie, Maya," he'd tell me while we prepped the sourdough at 5 a.m. "If you treat the dough wrong, it won't rise. It's honest work." I craved that honesty. At home, everything felt like a house of cards. Sarah had started hanging out with a crowd that scared me. Kids with fast cars, expensive habits, and a complete lack of consequences. I saw the way she looked at Mom's jewelry box when she thought no one was watching. I tried to warn Mom, but she just snapped at me, calling me jealous and bitter. The stakes were higher than I realized. Sarah was drowning in her own rebellion, and she decided I was the only one she could use as a raft. The night of the storm, the night my life changed forever, started with a scream that tore through the silence of our hallway. I was in my room, trying to finish a history essay, when Mom burst in. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "It's gone! My mother's diamond necklace! The only thing I have left of your father's gift to me!" My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that necklace. It was a vintage piece, heavy and sparkling, kept in a velvet box at the back of Mom's drawer. I also knew that Sarah had been complaining about a debt she owed to some boy named Kyle. I followed Mom into the hallway where Sarah was already standing, looking horrified, but it was a practiced horror. "I saw Maya near your room today, Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling with a fake, fragile emotion. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to believe it, but she's been so resentful lately, always talking about how she needs money for her own life. "I was at the bakery until 6 p.m. Check my time card. Mr. Henderson will tell you." But Mom wasn't listening to logic. She was driven by the raw, jagged pain of her loss. She marched into my room, Sarah trailing behind her like a silent, vengeful shadow. Mom ripped the sheets off my bed. She emptied my desk drawers, throwing my notebooks and pens across the floor. Finally, she grabbed my pillow. As she shook the pillowcase, a small, heavy velvet box thudded onto the hardwood floor. The silence that followed was deafening. The box had fallen open, and the diamonds caught the light of my desk lamp, mocking me. I looked at Sarah. For a split second, the mask slipped. She didn't look guilty, she looked triumphant. She had planted it there while I was in the shower. "How could you?" Mom's voice was a low, terrifying growl. She didn't look at me like a daughter. She looked at me like a thief, a stranger. "You've always been the difficult one, Maya, the one who lurks in the corners. But to steal from me? To steal my memories?" "Mom, I didn't do it. Please, look at her. Sarah did this." I was hysterical now, grabbing at Mom's arm. She shoved me away. "Get out," she said. It was too quiet. "What?" "I said, get out of my house," she screamed, the grief finally exploding. "If you can steal from your family, you don't have a family. Take your things and go." She grabbed a garbage bag and started shoving my clothes into it, my few sweaters, my school books, my father's old watch that he'd given me. She dragged me by the collar of my shirt toward the front door. The storm had just broken outside, lightning illuminating the neighborhood in ghostly flashes. She shoved the bag into my chest and pushed me out onto the porch. The cold rain hit my face, shocking the breath out of me. The last thing I saw before the door slammed was Sarah, standing at the top of the stairs, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. I walked. I didn't know where else to go. The rain was so heavy I could barely see the sidewalk. Every time a car drove past, splashing freezing slush onto my legs, I felt a fresh wave of humiliation. I was 15. I had $42 in my pocket and a bag of wet clothes. I felt like a piece of trash that had been discarded. I ended up at the flower pot. I sat on the cold concrete under the narrow awning, hugging my knees to my chest, shivering so hard my teeth rattled. I stayed there for hours, watching the streetlights dance in the puddles. I thought about the unfairness of it all. I had spent my life being the good daughter, the one who didn't cause trouble, and yet here I was, an outcast. At 4 a.m., the familiar metal of Mr. Henderson's old truck pulled into the alley. He saw me immediately. He didn't scream or call the police. He just walked over, lifted me up by the elbows, and led me inside. The warmth of the ovens hitting my face made me burst into tears. "Don't say a word," he said, handing me a clean, dry apron. "Go into the back, change into something dry, and start the proofing. We have work to do." That was the beginning of my new life. Mr. Henderson was a widower with no children of his own. When he found out what happened, he didn't just give me a job, he gave me a fortress. He contacted a lawyer friend who helped him navigate the legalities of me staying there. My mother never reported me missing. In her mind, I was dead. I watched from the shadows of the bakery as my old life moved on without me. For the next 3 years, I worked like a woman possessed. I did my schoolwork on the flour-dusted counters. I learned the science of yeast, the art of the perfect crust, and the business of running a shop. But the emotional toll was heavy. Every time a mother and daughter came into the bakery laughing and sharing a pastry, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I became guarded, hard. I didn't make friends, I didn't go to prom. I was building a life out of spite, fueled by the memory of that closing door. I saw Sarah occasionally in the local paper, the prom queen, the star athlete, the college-bound success. Each photo felt like a slap in the face. She was living the life I was supposed to have, built on the ruins of my reputation. I sent one letter to my mother on my 17th birthday. I wrote, "I didn't do it. One day you'll realize which daughter you actually lost." It came back a week later, the envelope unopened with "Return to sender" scrawled in Mom's jagged handwriting. That was the day I decided I no longer had a mother. Fast forward 10 years. I was 25, and I had moved to the city, 3 hours away from my hometown. With the money I saved and a small loan Mr. Henderson helped me secure, I opened Maya's Hearth. It was a success beyond my wildest dreams. I was known for my sourdough and my honesty bread. I was a different person, confident, successful, and seemingly over the past. But the past has a way of finding you. One Tuesday, a woman walked into the cafe. She looked ragged. Her coat was thin and stained, her hair matted, and her eyes had the hollow look of someone who had seen too much of the bottom. I was behind the counter, bagging a loaf of rye when our eyes met. It was Sarah. The silence that fell between us was like a physical weight. She didn't recognize me at first. I was polished, healthy, and standing in a position of power. But as I stared at her, the recognition dawned on her face. She began to tremble. "Maya," she whispered. Her voice was cracked, nothing like the melodic tone she used to manipulate everyone. I didn't say anything. I just pointed to a table in the back. I brought her a bowl of soup and a thick slice of bread. She ate like she hadn't seen food in days. Then the dam broke. "I lost everything, Maya," she sobbed, her head in her hands. "After you left, I thought I'd won, but the lie followed me. I started using things to keep up the act. I got into debt. I stole from Mom again and again, but there was no one left to blame. I eventually got caught. Mom, she couldn't handle the truth. She had a breakdown when she realized what I'd done to you." Sarah told me that 3 years ago, she had finally confessed everything to Mom. She told her about the necklace, about the fake tears, about the smirk on the stairs. She told me that Mom had spent every day since then trying to find me, but I had changed my name legally to my father's middle name and vanished into the city. "She's at Grace Memorial, Maya," Sarah said, her eyes red. "She has stage 4 cancer. She's been calling your name for weeks. She doesn't have much time left. Please, she just wants to say she's sorry." The anger I had nurtured for a decade flared up. Why should I go? She had thrown me into a literal and figurative storm when I was a child. She had chosen the lie over her own blood. I wanted to tell Sarah to leave. I wanted to enjoy my victory. But as I looked at my broken sister, I realized that my success was my own, but my bitterness was a prison. If I didn't go, I would be the one slamming the door this time. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the rhythmic hum of the heart monitor. When I stepped inside, the woman in the bed looked nothing like the fierce, terrifying mother I remembered. She was tiny, her skin like parchment, her eyes clouded. When she saw me, a tear tracked through the wrinkles on her cheek. "Maya," she breathed. It wasn't a command or a scolding, it was a prayer. I sat by her bed and took her hand. It felt like a bird's wing. "I'm here, Mom." "I was so wrong," she whispered, her voice a mere shadow. "I threw away the only thing that was real because I was too afraid of the dark. Can you ever—" "I already have," I said, and to my surprise, I meant it. In that moment, the 15-year-old girl in the rain finally felt the sun on her face. I spent the next 2 weeks in that hospital room. We didn't talk about the necklace or the lie. We talked about the bakery. I told her about Mr. Henderson and the way the city looks at dawn. I told her about the bread I made. She told me stories about my father that she'd been too sad to tell me when I was a child. We reclaimed 10 years in 14 days. When she passed away, she was holding my hand. She left the house to me, the house I was kicked out of. I sold it and used the money to open a foundation for displaced youth, a place for kids who have been thrown away to find their feet and learn a trade. I brought Sarah into the business, not as a partner, but as an apprentice. She had a long road to recovery, but for the first time in our lives, we were sisters instead of rivals. The get out that I thought was my death sentence was actually the universe's way of forcing me to bloom. I realized that some people are meant to be our anchors, while others are the wind that pushes us towards our true destination. My mother wasn't a villain. She was a broken woman who made a terrible mistake. And I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor who learned that the best revenge is living a life so full of light that the shadows of the past can no longer find you. I'm standing in Maya's hearth now, watching the first customers of the morning trickle in. The air is thick with the scent of cinnamon and warm yeast. It's raining outside, a soft, gentle spring rain that waters the earth rather than drowning it. I often think about that 15-year-old girl standing in the driveway with a garbage bag. I wish I could go back and whisper to her through the thunder. I'd tell her to keep walking. I'd tell her that the door closing is just the sound of another one opening somewhere else. People ask me how I survived that night. I tell them that the storm didn't happen to me, it happened for me. It stripped away a life that was built on a lie so I could build one on the truth. If you're standing in the rain right now, if you've been betrayed or cast out by the people who were supposed to love you, don't give up. The storm is just clearing the path. Keep your head up, keep your heart open, and remember, no one can take away your worth unless you give them permission to. The sun will rise again, and when it does, you'll be ready to shine. My name is Maya, and I'm finally home.